We are standing in the archaeological site of Beit Shearim. This site is located between Haifa and Afula, and it was excavated by famous archaeologists like Professor Binyamin Mazar, Professor Nachman Avigad, and other archaeologists. This site, Beit Shearim, is the place where the Mishnah, the basic book of the Jewish law, was written, edited here in Beit Shearim. The Mishnah is the basis with its 6 volumes, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. The Mishnah is the basis of the Talmud and of all the halacha, of all the books written by the Jewish people in the last 2,000 years. This is the second basis of the Jewish people. One, the Jewish literature stands on 2 legs. One is the Bible, and the second is the Mishnah. And the Mishnah was written here in Beit Shearim by a rabbi called Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He was the head, the president of the Supreme Court of the Jewish people, the Sanhedrin. And he lived here and he was buried here. How do we know that he was buried here? We know this from the Talmud. The Talmud tells us that the Mishnah was written in Beit Shearim by Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and his colleagues, his fellow rabbis who joined him in this project. In his last years, he became sick and moved to Tzipori in the middle of the Galilee, in which there were more doctors and more means to be cured. But the Mishnah was written here, and he was buried here, although his last years were in Tzipori, because we find that he wrote in his will that he ordered his sons to bury him in Beit Shearim. He wanted to be buried here because this was the place where he wrote the Mishnah, which was his main project, the project of his life. So he wanted to be buried here. The Midrash tells us about that special funeral. It took place on Friday, and he was brought from Tzipori to Beit Shearim to be buried here, and thousands of Jews came with him to give him the last honor. And in spite of the fact that it was Friday, and it's a long way from Tzipori, in the middle, in the center of the Galilee, to Beit Shearim, which is located in the western side of the Galilee, the people who participated in the funeral, they had enough time not only to come to Beit Shearim and to bury him, but also to go back to their homes and to prepare for Shabbat, because the day became longer by miracle. Just in the time of Joshua, that the day became longer. So this is another proof that he was buried here. So how come that the tradition, the popular, the usual tradition, identifies the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi in Tzipori and not here in Beit Shearim? How did it happen? It's a strange story that people go to pray on the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi to Tzipori, in spite of the fact that it is written explicitly in the Talmud and in the Midrash that he was buried in Beit Shearim. How did it happen? Probably the background to this mistaken tradition is the special story of Beit Shearim. Beit Shearim was a holy place. It was a holy place because Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the editor of the Mishnah, he lived here and he was buried here. And as a result of that, thousands of Jews wanted to be buried here and came to be buried here from all over the world. From all over the world. We find here tombs of Jews from Yemen in the south, from Turkey in the north, from Babylon in the east, from all over the world. So this was really a holy place after the death of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. But about 130 years after the death of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, in the year 351 CE, Beit Shearim was destroyed as a result of a rebellion of the Jews of the Galilee against the Byzantine Empire. The Roman Empire became Christian. Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire, and the Christian Roman Empire wanted to impose Christianity on the Jews of Israel, on the Jewish people in general, but especially on the Jews in the Galilee. As a result of that attempt, the Jews of the Galilee rebelled against the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire brought its army and succeeded to oppress this rebellion. And as a result of that rebellion, many Jewish cities and towns in the Galilee were destroyed. One of them was Beit Shearim. But Beit Shearim was not only destroyed because it was a holy place, because this was probably regarded by many Jews as the holy place, the place of the Mishnah, the place of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. The Byzantine Empire decided not only to destroy it, but to cover it, so that Jews would not be able to come to this holy place to pray on the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. So it was covered and later forgotten because nobody knew the location of Beit Shearim. In Tzipori was not so totally destroyed because Gentiles also lived there. So in Tzipori it was the next station of the Sanhedrin. The grandson of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah, very similar name, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah, was also the president of the Sanhedrin. He was buried in Tzipori. So people came to pray in the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah. If we can't go to Beit Shearim because it was covered, at least we can pray on the tomb of his grandson. But his name was very similar, Rabbi Yehuda, Nesiah HaNasi. So gradually it became the tomb of the family. And eventually it became the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Not only Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiah, but also Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. So this mistake happened as a result of the fact that Beit Shearim was totally destroyed and disappeared and forgotten. Only about 70 years ago, this site was excavated. It was first found by a Jewish guard called Alexander Zeit, who was sent to this area in order to keep the forests of this area from being cut by the Arabs, to preserve the woods, the forests, the wonderful old ancient woods of this area. And when he tried to prepare a garden for himself, he plowed the soil, the land, and found some ancient stones. He invited a famous archaeologist, Professor Benjamin Mazar from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and this site was excavated and was identified as Beit Shearim. So we found the ancient site in our generation, in our time. We found the site of Beit Shearim after almost about 1600 years in which this site was not known. It disappeared. It was covered. And we were privileged not only to find the site of the city of Beit Shearim, but also the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. And we are going to prove that this tomb, this site, is the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. One of the signs brought by the archaeologists, Professor Mazar and Professor Avigad, to the identification of this cave as the cave of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi is what we see on top of this cave. We see benches, stone benches on top of this cave, and this is unique to this cave. We found here many burial caves. This is the only cave on which we found these stone benches. We read in the will of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi that he did not want any monument to be built on his cave, but Hoshivu yeshiva al kivri, prepare a place for learning Torah, especially for learning Mishnah, because this was the new book. He wanted this book to be spread, to be learned. So he wanted a yeshiva, a place of Torah learning, on top of his cave, on top of his tomb. And here we can see the benches on which people who came to pray here came to pray and learned Torah and learned Mishnah on these benches, And this is one of the signs that this is indeed the cave, the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Now let us get into the cave so that we can see other signs that this is indeed the cave of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. So let's come with me and get into the cave.